You've been paying property taxes for decades, watching your bills climb higher every year while your freedom shrinks smaller. What if I told you there are 5 states in America where property taxes are so ridiculously low it practically feels like free land? I'm talking about places where folks in New Jersey pay over 2% of their home value in taxes every single year, but you could own the same amount of land and pay less than 0.5%. We're talking annual tax bills in the hundreds, not the thousands. States where the tax man basically forgets you exist and your land actually works for you instead of bleeding you dry. These aren't tiny patches of desert either. We're talking real states with real opportunities where you can stretch your retirement dollars, live simpler, and maybe even tell the HOA to take a hike. Let's dive in before everyone else figures out these hidden gems. Hit that like button if you're tired of the tax man treating you like his personal ATM, and subscribe because apparently rebellion requires algorithmic approval these days. First stop, Alabama. Yep, the Deep South isn't just for affordable vacations and sweet tea anymore. It could be your ticket to affordable land ownership with tax bills so low you'll think the government forgot how to count. Alabama's effective property tax rate sits around 0.38%, which makes it one of the lowest in the entire country. While your neighbors back in high-tax states are writing checks for thousands of dollars every year just to keep their land, you could be paying annual tax bills in the low hundreds. We're talking $700 to $1,200 for modest rural property where folks in other states would be hemorrhaging thousands to local bureaucrats who apparently need gold-plated staplers and 17 administrative assistants. You'd be looking at rural counties in Alabama where you can grab 5 to 10 acres for a price that won't require selling a kidney, and the ongoing tax bill stays so manageable you might actually sleep at night instead of lying awake calculating how many years of Social Security it takes to cover property taxes. The low cost of living combined with that tiny tax burden creates a beautiful equation, especially if you're retired, semi-retired, or just plain tired of funding the local government's yacht collection. Because the tax burden is practically non-existent, you suddenly have flexibility to build slowly, maybe try some off-grid or semi-off-grid setups, raise a few chickens, and not feel like your land is slowly bleeding your bank account to death every single year. Now, rural Alabama isn't paradise without trade-offs. You're looking at fewer paved roads, longer drives to get to big city services, and internet connectivity that might make dial-up look speedy. Some counties still have zoning rules that'll make your head spin, so don't think this is total free land where you can build a tire fort and call it home. You'll need to check county regulations, especially if you're dreaming of tiny houses, off-grid systems, or anything that makes bureaucrats nervous. And if you ever need to sell and move, you might be waiting longer than you'd like because rural land doesn't exactly fly off the market, like suburban McMansions. But here's the beautiful part. You've escaped the tax gouge trap. You actually own land instead of renting it from the county assessor. Your tax bill won't keep you tossing and turning at 3 in the morning, and you can finally build that freedom lifestyle you've been dreaming about while everyone else feeds the government machine. You can take all that money you're not sending to tax collectors and invest it in solar panels. A good, well, or maybe just keeping it in your pocket where it belongs. Okay, Alabama is definitely the low-tax sleeper state. But wait until you see the next one, which not only has rock-bottom rates, but also throws in some serious homestead exemptions that'll make you wonder why anyone lives anywhere else. Next up, Louisiana. I know what you're thinking right now. Bayous, Mardi Gras, gumbo, and probably some guy named Boudreaux selling crawfish out of the back of his pickup truck. But here's what you probably didn't know. Louisiana also delivers some of the lowest property tax burdens in the country, combined with serious homestead exemption perks. That'll make your accountant do a happy dance. Louisiana's effective property tax rate hovers around 0.55% of owner-occupied housing value, which puts it way below the national average and miles below the tax-hungry states that treat homeowners like personal piggy banks. But here's where it gets really interesting. Louisiana offers a homestead exemption on the first $7,500 of assessed value, or if you want to think about it in terms of fair market value, that's the first $75,000 of your home's worth that gets completely shielded from property taxes. Translation: if you live in the home you own, a big chunk of that value simply doesn't get taxed at all, which reduces your taxable base and shrinks your tax bill accordingly. It's like the state is actually on your side for once, instead of treating you like a walking ATM machine. Let's say you own a modest rural home or land with a small dwelling on it. You apply for that homestead exemption, and it knocks off that first slice of assessed value, which means your tax base drops significantly. Because the overall rate is already low and you're getting that exemption, your annual property tax could end up being genuinely modest, freeing up real money that you can invest in self-reliant systems, land improvements, or just keeping more cash in your own pocket where it belongs instead of funding someone else's pension plan. Louisiana also has plenty of rural, low-cost land parcels available, which means your purchase price is reasonable and your ongoing tax drag stays minimal. That's a pretty nice combination when you're trying to make your retirement dollars stretch. Now, Louisiana does come with its own set of quirks that you'll want to think about. The humidity can be brutal. Some coastal and parish areas deal with hurricanes. And depending on where you land, you might find yourself dealing with swampy terrain that's better suited for alligators than vegetable gardens. Some parishes and local municipalities might tack on additional taxes or levies so that low state rate doesn't automatically mean zero local costs. You'll want to check those local millages before you commit, and if you're building in a remote spot, services like healthcare access and infrastructure might be a longer drive than you're used to. But this is where you can own a home, call it yours, live simpler, and you won't wake up each spring dreading the tax bill like it's some kind of financial death sentence. The state actually gives you a break and the tax man becomes almost invisible. And now, if you thought those first two states were impressive, the third state brings you the lowest tax bracket in the whole country. Yes, we're heading to West Virginia next. Welcome to the mountain state West Virginia. Quiet, scenic, and absolutely shining as a star for low property taxes if you're ready to embrace the rural life and maybe make friends with a few deer who think property lines are just suggestions. West Virginia delivers an effective property tax rate of about 0.48 to 0.55%, and we're talking median annual property tax bills in the $500 to $700 range for many homes. Just think about that for a second. In some states, people are writing checks for thousands of dollars every year just to hold on to their land, but in West Virginia, you could own a median home worth around $115,000 and pay roughly $678 in annual property taxes. That's less than most people spend on their monthly cable bill and infinitely more useful than watching politicians lie to you on the evening news. For a retiree or semi-retiree who's tired of watching their fixed income get devoured by tax collectors, this combination is genuinely compelling. You buy a modest home or rural parcel in a county outside the metro hubs, and that tax burden stays low, which means you can actually direct your funds toward land improvements, gardening, off-grid equipment, or just plain old savings instead of funding another bureaucrat's coffee budget. West Virginia also lets you split your property tax payments into 2 installments and offers discounts for early payment, which is a nice little bonus if you're organized enough to take advantage of it. The slower pace of life, lower cost of living, and minimal tax burden all add up to create a lifestyle where your land isn't constantly draining your bank account like some kind of financial vampire. Now, West Virginia does come with its own set of challenges that you'll want to factor in. Some areas have internet speeds that make dial-up look like rocket science, fewer big city amenities, and healthcare options that might require a longer drive than you're planning for, especially if you're getting older and need regular medical attention. The mountain terrain can add complexity and costs to land development when you're dealing with septic systems, access roads, and getting utilities run to your property. And the resale market is smaller compared to the suburbs around major metros, so if you need to sell and move, you might need patience and possibly a good book to read while you wait. But here's the beautiful reality. You've carved out a place where your land actually works for you instead of the tax man. You can breathe easier knowing your tax burden is minimal, your budget is under control, and those self-reliant dreams you've been having are actually within reach instead of just wishful thinking. All right, 2 more states to go, and the next one keeps up the low tax theme while adding another angle. Extremely affordable land plus modest taxes in a forgotten corner of America that most people drive right past. Next up is the overlooked gem that is Arkansas. Most people rarely think freedom living when they hear Arkansas mentioned, but that's exactly where the opportunity hides, because everyone else is too busy looking at the flashy states with the fancy marketing campaigns. Arkansas delivers an effective property tax rate of around 0.53% according to the Tax Foundation, or about 0.59% according to other sources. But either way, it's still well below the national average and miles below what the tax-hungry states are charging their residents. We're talking median annual property tax payments in many counties that stay under $1,000. And when you combine that with some of the lowest land prices in the entire country, you've got yourself a powerful arbitrage opportunity that most people are completely ignoring. You can buy 10 to 20 acres in a less developed county, pay modest tax bills every year, and suddenly you have the budget flexibility to allocate more money towards self-sufficiency projects like solar panels, gardening, and raising animals, instead of handing over your hard-earned cash to local bureaucrats who apparently need gold-plated staplers and heated toilet seats in their offices. Arkansas assesses residential property at only 20% of market value for tax purposes, which means your taxable base is already significantly lower than what your property is actually worth. It's like getting a built-in discount that the assessor hands you on a silver platter, which is probably the only time in history a government employee has ever done anyone a favor. This setup works especially well for retirees because those low ongoing costs mean you're way less reliant on big pensions or rental income just to keep your land. You can stretch your fixed income further and maybe even sleep through the night instead of lying awake calculating whether you can afford to keep your property another year. Now, Arkansas isn't perfect and you'll need to do your homework. Zoning and land use rules vary dramatically by county, so you'll want to check whether alternative dwellings, tiny houses, or off-grid setups are actually permitted before you start planning your escape from civilization. Rural Arkansas can mean long drives for major medical services, fewer amenities than you might be used to, and slower growing resale markets if you ever need to sell and move. Some counties have higher rates than the state average, like Sebastian County, which hits 1.04% effective rate, so you'll want to avoid those outliers that apparently didn't get the memo about keeping taxes reasonable. This is where you quietly flip the land plus tax equation in your favor. You pay a tax bill so small it doesn't dominate your monthly budget, you live freer from the system, and your land becomes a tool for independence instead of a financial burden that keeps you awake at night. One more state to go, and we'll finish strong with another Deep South option that combines ultra-low taxes with some serious homestead benefits. Final stop, Mississippi. It may not be the flashiest state on the map, but when you're chasing lean budgets and maximum freedom per dollar, this is exactly the kind of overlooked place you want to consider, because everyone else is busy chasing the shiny objects while you quietly grab the real opportunities. Mississippi's effective property tax rate comes in around 0.67% based on some sources, with other reports putting it closer to 0.76%. Now, while that's slightly higher than the ultra-lowest states we've already covered, it still offers massive savings compared to those high-tax states that treat homeowners like personal revenue generators, especially when you combine it with Mississippi's incredibly affordable land costs. Because land in Mississippi is genuinely affordable, that low tax burden translates to manageable annual costs that won't make you question your life choices every time the tax bill arrives. You can acquire 5 to 10 acres of rural land for a modest amount, and you'll know that your annual tax bill will likely land in the low hundreds or low thousands, not the tens of thousands that some states seem to think is reasonable. That's real money you can redirect towards self-reliant infrastructure like rainwater catchment systems, solar panels, and food production, instead of feeding the endless appetite of tax collectors who apparently need marble floors and executive lunch budgets. The real benefit here is that you can fundamentally shift your budget from holding costs to living costs, which actually improves your quality of life instead of just maintaining your right to exist on your own property. Instead of spending thousands every year just to keep your land, you can invest in making your land work for you and support the lifestyle you actually want to live. Like many rural southern states, Mississippi does come with its own set of trade-offs. You might deal with infrastructure gaps, limited access to advanced healthcare, longer distances to major airports, and internet connectivity that occasionally makes you nostalgic for the good old days of carrier pigeons. Zoning and dwelling rules vary significantly by county, so off-grid living, tiny homes, and alternative energy installations might require some deeper digging into local regulations before you commit. Resale value growth may be slower than those high-growth areas where everyone's fighting over the same overpriced subdivisions, but if your goal is lifestyle control and cost control rather than real estate speculation, the trade-off might work perfectly for your situation. This is your chance to enter a zone where land isn't a financial drain but actually becomes a foundation for the life you want to build. You're not writing big tax checks every year. You're buying genuine freedom. You're swapping worry about tax bills for worry about which fruit tree to plant next and whether the chickens are getting along with the new additions to the flock. And that brings us full circle with 5 states, 5 low tax options, and 1 decision. How much of your budget do you want to hand over to bureaucracy versus how much you want to invest in your own freedom and independence? So there you have it: Alabama, Louisiana, West Virginia, Arkansas, and Mississippi. 5 states that offer you a genuine way to drastically reduce your property tax burden and shift your budget toward actually living instead of just paying to exist. If you're retired, semi-retired, on a fixed income, or just plain tired of watching the system bleed you dry one tax bill at a time, these states give you real options that don't require moving to another country or learning a foreign language. You're absolutely not crazy for wanting less tax, less financial bleeding, and more self-reliance. You are smart. You've earned the right to own land without being squeezed by bureaucrats who think your property exists primarily to fund their pension plans and office renovations. The system doesn't want you thinking like this because every person who escapes the high tax trap is one less source of revenue for their endless spending projects, but we're here to help you think exactly like this. In our next video, we'll dig into how to actually evaluate a rural parcel in one of these states. We're talking zoning red flags you need to watch for, utility situations that could cost you more than you bargained for, off-grid readiness assessments, and how to estimate your true ongoing costs including taxes, utilities, and maintenance so you don't get any expensive surprises after you've already committed. Don't miss it if you're serious about making a jump or at least want to know what you're looking at when you start shopping for your piece of freedom. Because freedom isn't just a feeling that makes you nostalgic for the good old days. Real freedom starts when the tax man stops being your landlord. Go own land. Go pay less. Go live free.